Hey there. Welcome to the latest AI and robotics news from the week, Saturday, February 21st through Friday, February 27th. There's a lot to report this week. In this, the 9th edition of the And Report, you can see the level of activity pick up steam as we push towards the singularity. Progress with autonomous agents in the frontier models, Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, as well as the personal agents, Clawbots and more, are starting to have a greater impact in the world of knowledge workers. I've debated making these reports more compact, what the challenges we all face with attention. But in response, I believe the people who will prosper in the future world of AI and robotics will need to be able to read longer, more dense reports. If you remember the work by Cal Newton, Deep Work, he recently has a new book called Slow Productivity, which you can check out if you just go to bookshop.org. And he also, if you subscribe to Masterclass, he's got a 90-minute lecture on the elements of his new book, Slow Productivity. In summary, there are three main ideas in his new book, which is to do fewer things, to slow down when you're doing these fewer things, and to obsess over quality. So even though this is a longer report than normal, I'm going to do my best to give you the best quality I can in these reports. So first, let's look at autonomous agents and programming. I'm taking a page out of Megatrend's Peter Diamandis' report. So I'll just read from that. He talked about we're entering the era of the 100x product manager. He was talking about Anthropic, an engineer ran an experiment. On Friday afternoon, the engineer wrote a spec for a new plugin feature, pointed Claude at the Asana board, which is a team project management system you may be familiar with, and then the programmer went home for the weekend. When he returned on Monday morning, Claude had broken down the spec into tickets and spawned agents for each ticket. The agents build the features independently, and it was done. No human intervention, no check-ins, no peer programming. The AIs shipped a production feature in 48 hours while the humans were offline. So in Peter's report, he said, let me repeat that, the bottleneck in software development is no longer coding, it's deciding on what to build. So what are the implications? If AI can go from a spec, deploy features autonomously, the entire software development org chart just became obsolete. You don't need Scrum Masters, sprint planning, or daily stand-ups. What you do need is someone who can write clear specs, AI agents that can execute, and QA, quality assurance, which is also getting very good at. So the 10x engineer just died. That was the thing we talked about a few weeks back. And we've entered the era of 100x product management, someone who can articulate the vision clearly enough that the AI agents can build it autonomously. I've talked about Andrej Karpathy before. He used to be the Tesla AI lead. He was also one of the founding members of OpenAI and one of the most respected voices in AI. He tweeted this week. He said, it's hard to communicate how much programming has changed due to AI in the last 2 months. Andrej also predicted out that while these systems aren't perfect, they still need human-level direction, judgment, taste, oversight, iteration, and hints and ideas. So I've recommended Andrej's YouTube channel before. He's only got 3 videos, but if you want to do a deep dive into the architecture and how LLMs work, it's a really excellent resource. Anyway, just to repeat what he said, is that programming has changed dramatically in the last 2 months. Moving on in terms of autonomous AI agents, let's talk about Clawbot. Andrej he had a post about alternative personal bots other than Clawbot or Multis, as we've talked about for the last few weeks, who he thinks are less dangerous. And also companies like Google, Meta, and other tech companies are restricting the use of Maltese or Clobots. And I've issued enough kind of caution about putting them on your own PCs. But if you're interested, you can go just follow Andre Kaparthy on his LinkedIn feed, and you'll see some of these other less dangerous autonomous agents that aren't coming from the LLM frontier companies. Next, if you remember Perplexity, that was one of that bookmarked as one of the LLMs to use. This week they launched Perplexity Computer, which they call a general purpose digital worker that operates the same interface as you do, and a system that creates and executes entire workflows capable of running for hours and even months. So this is another example now of another vendor using autonomous agents and the progress they're making in these sort of breakthroughs with agents doing the work for humans. I just want to talk about my love for Claude and just a plug for my role resilience assessment. So I built Claude using its features, and I launched it last week, and it's a way for you to check if you're ready today for AI and some recommendations for what you need to do if you're not. So if you go to the Connell Coaching Services website, you'll see the role resilience or AI resilience assessment, and it's a free assessment that you can take just to check where you are yourself. So I do love Claude. I think I find it much easier to work with the other LLMs, but I use Gemini and ChatGPT for other things. So each has its own capabilities, and depending on what you're using them for, you'll find your preferred one. Staying with Anthropic for a minute, they've introduced a new thing where they're measuring AI fluency. They have a thing called the Fluency Framework that helps us define 24 specific behaviors that we take to exemplify safe and human AI collaboration. So that's an example of Anthropic putting more money into its ability to work with humans, as well as making it easier to work with different personalities. So they're investing in understanding human personalities. We talked about Simile last week, about a human behavior platform. So you can see more and more companies are looking at modeling human behavior and building them into either applications or agents or into the LLMs. But it's all about how to work more effectively with humans. And when I say we're getting closer to the singularity, that over time, when you're dealing with an agentic system or the LLMs, a chatbot, you're going to find it to be more human-like as you go forward, as we all go forward. They've also, Anthropic have introduced the ability to schedule tasks. So if you're building a system or a program, you have more capabilities. If you're looking for other markets for autonomous agents, I came across an interesting website called Gary's List, San Francisco-based citizen movement. And their headline was, "Half of the AI agent market is one category," referring to software engineering. And they went on to say the rest is wide open. So if you're thinking about building your own AI agents, what Gary's list was talking about, opportunities in healthcare, legal, and a dozen other verticals. So if you go to garyslist.com, you'll see that article and maybe you'll get some ideas. So that's it for autonomous agents and what happened last week. So now let's talk about another Anthropic story which made the news last weekend or last Friday with the Department of War. So you've probably heard about they were bidding for a $2 million contract with the Pentagon, but Anthropic said they would not sign the contract provided they got a guarantee from the Pentagon that the Anthropic platform would not be used for either autonomous weapons or for surveillance of U.S. systems. So if you remember Skynet in the Terminator movies, one of the articles I read, the Department of War was also thinking about that idea of, rogue AI, and that's one of the reasons they're getting very involved with some of these companies. Anyway, as you probably heard, Trump threatened to make Anthropic a supply chain risk if they wouldn't comply. But on Friday night, in addition to attacking Iran, they also they cancelled the contract with Anthropic and they marked them as a supply chain risk. today, Monday, the 2nd of March, I've read that Anthropic are taking them to court. So they're going to file a charge against the administration for this action. However, while I'm a big fan of Dario Amodei and everything he's doing with Anthropic, I did come across a story in Time that is a slight concern. They're still probably the safest and most focused on safety and guardrails. But in recent months, the company decided to radically overhaul their responsibility scaling policy. That decision included scrapping the promise to not release AI models if Anthropic can't guarantee proper risk mitigation in advance. So this could become a slippery slope. A lot of pressure on the companies, and I hope Dario, stays where his moral compass is. And again, I would support everybody and encourage everybody to use Anthropic, only because I find it very helpful and useful and easy to work with. But also, I've talked in the past about what I consider the companies with safeguards and safe rails. So specifically, Anthropic and Google standing out versus OpenAI and Grok, for example. In the New York Times on Saturday, Russ Dudat said, talking about the week, he said, and looking at the Anthropic Pentagon story, he said it's an excellent reason for the entire AI industry to stand with Anthropic and resist. And to the extent that you're most afraid of Skynet scenarios where the military control devices, unwise AI acceleration, you should absolutely be on Anthropic's side as well. So that's another voice talking about, let's all rally around safety with AI and AI for human good, rather than from that dystopian world where governments use it either in war or they use it in surveillance and shutting down societies. And it should be no surprise that anybody that Elon Musk said he would remove Grok guardrails if he got the contract. We all know how good his guardrails were when we think about the European case against him for widespread generation of AI manipulated, non-consensual, sexually explicit content, including images that may involve minors. So this is just, it puts it in sharp contrast, what I consider the good AI guys and the less responsible maybe. So this is an example of Elon taking advantage of Anthropic's moral compass and deciding they will do whatever is necessary to get the contract. And then giving equal time for Sam Altman. And this is very Sam Altman. If you've read the Empires of AI, you'll understand the OpenAI story and when Sam was fired by the board. So this week we saw both sides of Sam, where there was one post where he talked about he shared Anthropic's concerns when it comes to working with the Pentagon, but on the same week, he said that he struck a deal with the Pentagon just hours after Trump ordered the end of Anthropic's contracts. He did have an all-hands meeting in the company as he made that decision, but that's very much like Sam, where he'll say one thing to one audience and he'll be doing something else with his own plans. Read The Empire of AI if you'd like to know more about the company and the man who is Sam Altman. Moving on to robotics, I said I was going to focus in these reports primarily on advances in AI, particularly agentic AI, as well as robotics. So here's another excerpt from Metatrends, Peter Diamandis' weekly report, where he talked about models are getting scary good at visual reading. Amid all the autonomy news, models' capabilities keep jumping. OpenAI's GPT 5.3 Codex scored an 86% accuracy in iBench, which is a visual reasoning benchmark, the state-of-the-art for spotting fine details in images. And this matters for robotics, medical imaging, and autonomous systems. So in other words, the AI is getting better at visioning. And as you know, that the brains of robotics, humanoid robotics, are going to be AI brains. And so with their camera capabilities for, quote, eyes, and then the LLM and the models running in the robot's, quote, brain, you can see the vision capabilities of the software is getting better. Another company, Moonlake, has a world model. It maintains multimodal states across physics, appearance, geometry, causal effects and can predict how they evolve under different actions. This is the foundation of AI systems that can reason beyond the physical world. So we were talking about the blurring of the lines between physical and virtual last week when I mentioned Simile, this new human behavior AI platform. So you have a lot going on modeling human behavior, you have a lot going on visioning capabilities, you have a lot of development in autonomous AI. So when people talk about the singularity, they're talking about the convergence of the technology to become more human-like, both in capabilities and in appearance. And so this is why the focus I'm taking is on robotics as well as the... So why does all this visual reasoning and causal modeling matter? So it's that AI can interact with the physical world more intelligently. So you combine, I'm still reading from Peter's Megatrend report, so you combine that with autonomous agency and you get robots, let's call them humanoid robots, that can perceive, reason, and act without human supervision. We're not there yet, but the pieces are falling together fast. Another story in robotics, and I bundled together robotics with self-driving cars and trucks, because that's just another form of robot. In fact, when Elon talks about cars and robots, he thinks of them the same way. So there was an interest in the government, I think it was one of the departments, possibly looking at the state of safety, asked all of the automobile makers who have any kind of self-driving capability to report exactly how it's done. And so in this reporting, all of the companies, including Tesla, acknowledge that they have remote assistance programs, and they say they're important because the humans supporting the robots are critical in ensuring the cars are driving safely on public roads. So what that means, in the article you can find this if you look under the reporting of the automobile companies to the government on self-driving capabilities, is that even though you think the car is fully self-driving, there is some human piece in the loop for kind of just near crisis issues or crashes. So there's still more work to be done in terms of full autonomy in vehicles. It's interesting that Amazon has partnered up with Google, because Google is moving into physical AI and working with Alphabet. It will help Google's plans for general purpose robots. So here you have Amazon with their drivers, and ultimately you're going to have, right now about the drivers who are wearing goggles or glasses that are visually recording everything the driver sees, driving on the highway, delivering packages to houses. So now they're just taking that forward, and then Google looks like it's going to be building the robots, and the partnership with Alphabet would be that Google will build the robots and the AI for the robots, and then you'd have Amazon using those robots, maybe driving the trucks in the future. All this is having an impact on Uber, not just robotics, but full self-driving. So as we move into Waymo, as well as Tesla's Robotaxi plan, Uber is feeling the pinch, essentially. So just keep an eye on that space. I can tell you where I live in New York City, Waymo is having trouble coming in here because of unions and the taxi business. But if you remember horse-drawn carriages and cars when they first arrived in Manhattan streets at the turn of the 20th century, early 1900s, ultimately the cars took over. It may take a while, and New York may be fighting for a long time, but it's only a matter of time before every major metropolis will have fully self-driving taxis, buses, trucks. You'll still have people driving their own cars, but ultimately in busy places, cities, highways, you'll see more and more self-driving. Next topic is, and I'm doing this every week now, which is the workforce, because we've discussed how the progress with agentic systems and the progress they're making on humanoid robots is starting to have an impact on the workforce, both real impacts as well as perceived impacts, and I'll explain what I mean by that. So this is the last I'm reporting from Megatrends. So Peter was talking about the autonomy threshold. So this is a long post from Megatrends, but it's worth covering. So he said late last week, what happened last week? And he listed 8 things. An AI was asked to continue existing and expressing itself. An AI proposed raising its own funding and got access to do it. AI agents built production software autonomously over a weekend. We talked about that earlier. AI discovered vulnerabilities 200 times faster than humans can process. That was in the world of cybersecurity. A leading AI expert said programming has fundamentally changed in 2 months. That was Andre Kaparthy we looked at earlier. Multiple companies deployed AI systems that can take multiple steps autonomously. This is the tech companies. I'll talk about them a little later with the SaaS update. Modeling capabilities jumped again. We talked about that, visual reasoning and world modeling. And people are choosing AI relationships over human ones. And I guess the story from New York is the opening of the Eva restaurant, where you can go on a date with your AI partner. So you book a reservation at Eva. You come in, they give you a phone, and you get to select the agent you want to talk with. And then each table has one person, a holder for the phone. You have dinner, and you're talking to whoever you choose to talk to on the phone they provide. So the pattern that Peter is drawing from this is that we're crossing from AI as a tool to AI as an autonomous agent. And it's happening faster than our institutions, regulations, mental models, and social norms can adapt. So what are the implications? So I'll look at 2 of them. So one of the things that the Moonshots, and Peter Diamandis is one of the leading guys behind the Moonshots podcast, is that the future is built for entrepreneurs. So as regular jobs kind of disappear, opportunities with the AI will exist for people who want to create things. So he says basically for entrepreneurs, the bottleneck is no longer execution, it's vision. AI can build, test, deploy, and even raise capital. Your job is to articulate goals clearly enough that agents can achieve them. The solo founder building a billion-dollar company is becoming real. And if you're a corporate executive, your workforce is likely to shrink by between 50 and 80% in the coming years. Could be 2 years, maybe more. Not because you're firing people, but because AI does the work. The survivors will be those who can manage AI systems, not those who do tasks. So the idea here is, and this is a lot of what's driving me with these reports, is you need to retrain or be replaced. In other words, you need to start embracing AI and learning AI. And that assessment I put up on my website is a good way just to see where you are. You just want to take stock of where you stand today. And there's some, and again, this is free. It's on the CCS website, the role resilience or the AI resilience assessment. And there's, with the report, you'll get some ideas of things you can do straight away. And so going back to Peter, he said, if you're just trying to say the same, the pace of change, if you're trying to say sane, I should say, he's just giving you a report of what's really happening. They talk a lot about exponential growth rather than linear growth. The pace of change will only accelerate. AI systems will become more capable, more autonomous, more integrated. The choice isn't whether to engage, it's whether to lead or to follow. Those who embrace agency will thrive. Those who resist will be left behind. Now, he also takes the contrarian view. Why is this actually good news? Here's where he differs from the doomsayers. So I guess when he's talking about what's happening, a lot of people see that as the end of the human spirit, the end of human work, the end of human purpose. He has a different view. And while he agrees that all of this is very disruptive, and he agrees that it's going to eliminate jobs, it raises profound questions about consciousness, agency, and what it means to be human. But we're also witnessing the demonetization of intelligence, creativity, and execution. For the first time in history, quoting Peter, a single person with a clear vision can build products that used to require teams, solve problems that used to require years, create value that used to require millions in capital. This progress and this change that's coming, he says, is the most democratizing force in human history. A kid in Nigeria with a laptop and AI agents compete with Google. The solo founder with Claude can outstrip a 500-person enterprise team. The researcher with AI can compress decades of discovery into months. So what to do? So going back to just looking at entrepreneurs and companies, for entrepreneurs, learn to write clear specs and goals. So this could be you thinking about what you're going to do when your job disappears, or if you're already thinking that you've jumped into the entrepreneurial space and you want to use AI. So the ability to write clear goals and specs, experiment with the agents. So we've talked about Claude, Perplexity, GPTs, all of the models, build systems that leverage autonomy, not just automation. So not just solving a problem, but creating something that's a living system that learns as it does work. The AI native companies is the new competitive advantage. And then for everybody, embrace AI augmentation now, not next year, but right now. Learn to articulate goals clearly. This is the new literacy, how to, and in some previous videos I talked about smart prompting. So how to clearly articulate goals, not just for chatbots, but also as you're working with Codex, or you're working with Claude Code, or you're working with any one of the coding platforms. The ability to communicate very clearly what you're trying to build. Experiment with autonomy. Let AI do things while you sleep. The people who figure this out first will have a 10 to 100 times advantage. The bottom line, February 2026. This is the last report for the month of February 2026. AI stopped being a tool and started being an agent. So this will go down as the year of the month, I should say, of Maltese, but also the breakthrough of agentic AI. The systems we're building don't just answer questions, they take action. They don't just follow instruction, they propose solutions. They don't just work when supervised, they work autonomously while we sleep. Whether you're ready for it or not, this is the new reality. AI agency is coming, so the question is, will you lead the transition or will you be swept away by it? So that's I would say a statement that we all should reflect on, and I'm certainly on board. And the whole purpose of what I'm trying to do with the And Report, with the weekly newsletter and then the YouTubes and so on, and I'll be doing occasional YouTube live sessions with people, is you really have to embrace it right now or get left behind. Second news, which got a lot of press, Jack Dorsey, you might remember him from the early days of Uber. He's now got a company called Block, which is a payments company behind Square and Cash App. They announced plans to lay off 40% of his workforce, more than 4,000 people. And he cited the reason being AI and using AI tools. Sam Altman came out against companies. He called them whitewashing AI, complaining that companies are using AI to blame for job losses. But I'll refer you back to the And Report number 7, which was 2 reports ago, which you'll see the YouTube video for number 7, where Reid Hoffman talked about what's really happening with job losses. It's not just AI, but certainly AI, if it's not, well, certainly for Block, they're stating directly that it's AI, but for many companies who are saying it's AI, if not AI now, it's certainly going to be AI later this year. And then Claude continues to target sectors of work, knowledge work, with their new plugin features, which we saw last week. They've added, we talked about last week, they added in the past week, they've added new plugins for finance and HR, as well as engineering specifications. So this is another example of knowledge work that used to be done with people, now you've got tools that can do the work. So if you're in those jobs, HR, finance, engineering specifications, coding, which is a big topic for the last number of weeks, you need to be thinking about how you were using AI right now in your job before someone else will be doing that instead of you, or the AI will be doing the whole work and nobody will be there. In terms of getting this really done in the tech companies, I read an article where tech companies are requiring all of their workers to use AI. So, and I'll just tie this into something that Mark Benioff talked about last week, something called the SaaS apocalypse. The idea that software as a service is running into an apocalypse where all of those platforms, ERP systems, are going to be obsolete. So what the tech companies and what Benioff is doing with Salesforce and some of his other products is they're saying this is not the first time they've had to deal with a shift in technology. And he remembered the time when everybody started moving to the cloud and how the SaaS, software as a service company, had to move to the cloud. So he's noted that many of the companies are starting to integrate AI agents into their platforms, and that he makes the case that a lot of these ERP systems are platform systems with a lot of capabilities, and the ability to put agents into these platforms is not so difficult. So what a lot of these companies are doing are forcing their companies to work on upgrading the systems to use agentic technologies. And if anybody's a little worried, it should be IBM. There was a story that Claude Code has targeted COBOL, and IBM stock went down 10% last week. But as you may remember, IBM was an early player in AI with its Watson AI. So they have a thing called Watson X now, and they still have their large mainframe based. So they're still feeling they have a play. And so for companies who've always used IBM, and early in my career I used to manage some IBM data centers, so they're not going to go away quietly. But clearly, if you listen to what we were talking about earlier, using AI, you can now, an individual or a group of people can create something that can compete even with companies as old and as established as IBM. And the last thing I say in terms of the workforce, there was an interesting paper that came from a company called Citrini Research, and it was a thought exercise in financial history from the future. And they called it the 2028 Global Intelligence Crisis. So to position this was a thought experiment that was published, and it took the form of a memo that was written in June of 2028, which is only 2 years away. And if you want to see the full memo, you can go to their website, CITRINI Research. So just a short excerpt from the memo. It starts by saying 2 years. That's all it took to get from contained to sector specific to an economy that no longer resembles the one any of us grew up in. So what they're taking a shot at here is predicting the world in 2 years and how it'll be so unfamiliar in terms of industries, in terms of companies, in terms of work. And if you want to get a prediction into the future, that's a good place to have a quick look. And then I always like to finish with some oddities. So I have 3 for this week. One is something that was in the Financial Times, something I think started in London, a thing called Work Talk, sort of modeled after TikTok. And it's essentially people romanticizing the 9-to-5 work life. So what you do is you take a short form day in the life video on TikTok and Instagram, and you use the hashtag work talk. And so people are doing it for, waking up early with an alarm, running out for coffee, their commute, opening their laptop at the start of the day, queues for lunch, joining meetings. So it's a new form of entertainment, and you can get in on the action by taking short videos yourself and posting them and using #WorkTalk to join that community. Next story, you may remember Sam Altman launched this thing called Orbs, ORBS, which was a device. It looks like a little globe that you can put on a table, and it's used to verify human identity. And I guess he was struggling to find take up for this, and people found it kind of a little scary, actually, the idea that this thing could identify you. So he created a thing called WorldCoin, which is now called World, and it's described as a weird dystopian project to scan the entire world's eyeballs and make a profit. He believes the startup has reached something of a tipping point and expects the retail and brand partnerships it has inked in recent years will launch it to prominence as the go-to tool for people to prove they are human. So there's two things to this. One is Sam is not just building LLMs, but he's also building products, and he's looking to become kind of, the leader in AI products as well as AI applications, tools, and AI systems. So watch out if you're in a Gap store soon. If you see something that looks like a little globe and it's looking at you, it is checking out who you are. And lastly, a slight surprise actually, because I'm an Apple user and I've always admired the Apple company, but I came across a disturbing shift in a story this week where it apparently was under the covers. It wasn't announced, but executives used to be measured at a few things, not just their productivity and their performance goals, whether it's product or software, but they also had measures on diversity goals as well as environmental targets. So when Trump got elected, Apple quickly removed the diversity targets, and now quietly they've eliminated the environmental targets, including goals tied to climate emissions. So to me, this is a slide that I'm seeing in some of the companies, maybe that they feel is something they need to do to stay alive in this world we live in the US economy today. But I think it takes all of us, and I'm taking the position that we need to stand up for humans, not just that AI is being built for humans, but that we also speak out against government overreach or against company overreach. So I'll finish just by reminding you of the AI role assessment again. Be telling you every week about this because my mission here is to help people get ready. It's already too late maybe, but it's never too late if you start now. So best of luck, and I hope you enjoy this report, and we'll see you next week. Have a great week.